Well, that was weird. What happened to my music? It just stopped all of a sudden. Ah! Well, maybe my speaker will know better. We'll do it over the phone. All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome once again. It is your Wednesday night webinar. I am Patrick McGrath, Chief Clinical Officer at NOCD. Good to be here with all of you once again, and happy Wednesday night webinar to everyone. It's like it's a holiday in and of itself, the Wednesday night webinar. Maybe we should have some theme colors and things as well. Oh, wait, we have a theme song that talks about hold on to the colors. So, there's a color involved in there as well, too. So that's always good. NOCD, our sponsor. Check it out. If you're looking for teletherapy, we're available across the US of A and Canada and the UK and Australia as well. So if you're looking for any good old teletherapy, we've got you covered. And here in the US of A, we've also got insurance covering us as well too. So come on over. Download that app at Google Play or iOS. Click that therapist button. You can get connected to one of our team, or go to NOCD.com or treatmyocd.com, and we would be happy to work with you through that as well too. All righty, Roo. We are going to get going here. Let's go live. Let's get our microphone all set up and ready to go. Yep, there we go. All right, gotta look the proper DJ, of course, And let's see what we have in the old stream here. Let's see. Marion says, hope you're okay. Sending you best wishes. Well, thanks, Marion. Yeah, doing pretty well, actually. So thank you. Nushin says, how do you deal with anger, grief, and sadness of all the losses, years, opportunities, finances to OCD? Well, comes a point where hopefully you're going to say, you know what, OCD, you've taken enough, and now it's my turn to take, and I'm going to go live the life that you want to live. So you could mourn and do all of that, or you could say, well, it is time to move on. Imagine, Newson, if you were, let's say, unable to live well because you needed an organ transplant, and after 15 years of suffering with a failing organ, you were given the transplant. Would you now, given the transplant, mourn the 15 years that you had without the transplant? Or would you be like, woohoo, let's go and move on and live the life that you want to live? I would hope that would be what you would do. One of the things that I like to say to people, and I'll say it again here, is, will all of you spend the rest of your life living next to your tombstone, wondering when you will be 6 feet under it? Or will you spend the rest of your life partying like a rock star, having a great time, showing up on the day of your death at your tombstone, wearing a boa and saying, dang, that was a great time. Wow, how much fun was that? And it doesn't really matter when that starts, right? It doesn't have to begin right now, right? You don't have to have all the fun things going on. But even if you aren't having all the fun things going on now, and you eventually do get to the fun things, are you going to enjoy those fun things? Or are you going to be like, oh man, I had so much time without fun things though? And that's what I should really be focusing on, is going back to all those days that I didn't have the fun things and being angry and sad and pissed off about those things. So now that I have the opportunity to have all the fun things, am I going to ruin them by going back to the time that I didn't have the fun things and focusing on that? I hope you don't do that. I hope that you don't waste that time, right? It is not worth it. It will get you nowhere. It will not improve your mood, your finances, your lot in life, whatever it is. It will not make anything better whatsoever. It will only lead you to do what OCD was doing in the past, which is to live a distracted life. And don't live a distracted life. Live a life in the moment. Live a life that gives you what you want. Since it's already come up, people are asking how I'm doing. I was thinking the other day about how before she passed away, my wife would say, I'm sorry, right? And she would want to apologize for having cancer. And I kept telling her, this is not about being sorry. And I'm not going to play an apology game with you, because I already know that you didn't want to have cancer. So instead of apologizing for having cancer and being full of woe over the fact that we didn't get to do all the things that we were hoping to do in the life that we had together, let's at least make it the best that we can, right? Let's at least do whatever is possible. And sometimes that just meant ordering food in and having a meal that I didn't cook one night, or it might have meant just watching a movie and on some streaming show, right? Something of that nature. But if that's what we could do, and that was the best thing that we could do, then that was the best thing that we did. And I didn't want to spend the last 5 years dealing with cancer. She didn't want to spend the last 5 years dealing with cancer. And I sure as heck, though, wasn't going to spend those 5 years every day going, oh, crap, you have cancer. This really sucks. Why do we have to have cancer? It's just not fair. Why does everything happen to me or you? But if, even though she got it, if I had OCD, it would be happening to me because OCD is a selfish jerk. And so it'd be like, why does this happen to me all the time? And did I make the right decision? And boy, should I have even gotten married? And maybe I shouldn't. And what if I didn't? What would my life be like now if I hadn't done that? But then she might be alone and then have to, live with her parents who would take care of her. And would that be as satisfying as what I could do for her? And now I've got two paths to go down. The woe is me, and then the woe is her potentially as well too. And it would just suck, right? It would have absolutely sucked more life out of us than the cancer was already sucking life out of us. So uh, I didn't go down that path. I absolutely refused to go down that path because I saw absolutely nothing good coming out of it whatsoever. It wasn't going to make our lives better. It wasn't going to cure her cancer. It wasn't going to stop her from dying. It wasn't going to make anything better whatsoever. So I had one job in all of this, and I didn't always do a great job. And I'm going to be the first to admit to all of you, there are days I could have done better. Okay, there are absolutely days that I could have done better, but I saw my job as trying to be positive and trying to make the best situation out of what we were going through that I possibly could. And every day that I hopefully achieved that was great. And every day that I didn't achieve that was a day to learn from so that the next day I could try to be better than I was the day before. Right. And if all of you could approach OCD in a similar kind of way, instead of debating these just useless debates of why did I have to get this and it isn't fair, or another favorite, why do I have to have this type of OCD? Why couldn't it be any other kind of OCD but the kind that I have? I mean, if it could just be any other kind, it would be better than this kind, which of course it wouldn't be any other kind because OCD only picks on things that are really important to you, so it has to be that kind. But and I'd love to see all of you discussing in the comments, and it's sometimes it's hard for me to keep up on the comments, everyone, because I'm trying to get to questions here at the beginning, and all of you are commenting. I know at the bottom because I see that new comments are popping up. I just don't have access to all of them unless I scroll here, and I want to finish this out and pay attention to this. But I I I want all of you through what we're doing here, not only listening to me, right? Because who wouldn't want to do that, right? But I want you to support each other, and I want you to hold each other accountable. And if one of you says, "Okay, this week I'm going to do this," I want you to come back next week, and I want you to report on how it went and what you did and how, what did you learn from the experience, right? That's that's all really important stuff to do. So Dushin, thanks for bringing that up because, and I've been on a soapbox here for a few minutes on this. I understand. So I do think it's important, though. I do think it's important to recognize that if someone else had OCD or depression and now were feeling better, I wonder if you'd go up to them and say, it's great you're feeling better, but don't you really regret all the years you lost? Or could you just end the sentence with, I'm so glad to see that you're feeling better, and move on from there? I hope that helps. Trisha asks, is it important to figure out your core fear in OCD? Thank you. I think, Trisha, that kind of depends on the person that I'm working with. Some people will be able to identify that there is kind of a core fear or theme that's going on with them. And others will just recognize that instead of one core kind of theme that is the theme to encompass everything, that there are several different areas or themes that are going on and we can address all of them too. So, Trisha, I would say it just kind of depends on um, who I'm working with and which way I go with that. So, Chris asks, "Hey, Dr. McGrath, I know OCD concerns are based on what if, but if there's a past real event that I actually did, how do I cope with guilt of being responsible for something I did that was heinous?" Um, so, Chris, I know we've chatted about this one in the past, and I'm happy to review it again here. But you can also check out maybe some previous ones to see if my answer changes. But I don't think it will. I think it'll be pretty similar. Chris, when do we get to a point where we can say that we've been rehabilitated, or that we can move on for something? Or, Chris, does a bad act have to stay with us for the rest of our lives, and we will forever only be known as that bad act, and nothing that we can do going forward ever will undo that experience, right? Is there a chance at forgiveness ever that anyone can have, right? And maybe there's an act that you've done that you would just say, you know what, even if anyone else did this, I would find it heinous too. Okay. And maybe you would have a real hard time forgiving anybody else if they ever did that act. And maybe you do have a hard time forgiving yourself as well too. But if you're going to live the rest of your life constantly reminding yourself of that act as a way to prevent yourself from ever doing it again, I'm wondering if that's actually necessary, because I don't believe that it is. Because I also believe that once you've done something and you've gotten a result that you really did not like at all, and it really did turn out pretty crappy, you probably just instinctively learn this might not be the best thing to ever do again. If you're unless you're like Evil Knievel, who did these types of things. But there's a lot of people who have tried, motorcycle jumping or skiing, who the first time down, wrecked into a tree and were like, skiing's not for me, actually. Or jumping motorcycles appears to be a lot more painful than I thought that it would be. Most of us can learn in one trial learning, actually, that when something goes horribly bad, that we don't do it again. The vast majority of people will be able to kind of just learn that experience. OCD, though, says you can't ever learn anything well enough, and I have to constantly remind you of that thing in order to assure that you don't ever do that thing again, because if I'm not there to assure that you don't do that thing again, you might actually do that thing again, and then you would do another heinous act, and what kind of person would you be for doing it twice? I mean, that would really be once, right? Awful. Twice, though? Whew. Oh, man. Worst person ever in the entire world right there, right? So let's make sure that doesn't ever occur. Don't even get me started on 3 times. I mean, we're like, geez, I can't even, my head's about to explode just thinking that, right? Is there enough guilt, Chris? Can there be enough guilt? And if the answer is no, then there's nothing that I can tell you, unfortunately, via this webinar that's going to get you to feel better about this act, because you're holding on to a belief system that says you're not allowed to feel better about this act. You must constantly be punished over this thing. And the only way to any form of redemption or forgiveness is continual reminder of what a horrible, awful person you are. Now, that's OCD talking. That's not me talking, right? And I just want to make that very clear. That's what OCD is telling you is the only way to skate through the rest of life and to barely get through without any other bumps or bruises in the whole situation. I just want you to know, Chris, that there's another way. And that isn't the only way to go through. There is another way. Right. And that is to be able to recognize, X-year-old me did that thing. This thing turned out pretty awful and horrible. What have I learned from that? And what am I going to do to make sure that the world's a better place going forward? Right. What can I do for that? I don't want to make this all about my wife passing away, Chris, but there were nights that I lost my cool, right? Where she had dropped the third thing, right? And I'm not trying to equate this to a heinous act that you're doing. So don't even take it that way, but this is just a tiny, tiny microcosm. And I just remember I'm on the floor cleaning stuff up, and then another thing falls and just explodes on the floor because neuropathy in her hands and tiredness from the medication. And I just remember screaming, and it startled her, and she cried, and I felt like a jerk. And so in that small of an instance, Chris, how long should I punish myself for the fact that I screamed when she dropped the third thing? Because here's someone who was dying of cancer, who didn't have total control over herself and her body. Chris, how much punishment do I deserve? And I'm going to bet, Chris, if you were here with me right now, you would be saying, oh, hey, don't, you got to let that go. Right. I mean, everybody loses their cool now and then and everything. And here's what I found. People with OCD can be great at that for everyone else in the world but themselves. Because when it comes to themselves, we have specialness, right? The rules of the world are different for me than they are for everyone else. It's fine if anyone else in the world goofs up. It's fine if anyone else makes a mistake. And I can even forgive anyone else's heinous event, but not mine. Mine's different. Mine is the worst of the worst. I have a different set of rules that apply to me than apply to the rest of the world. And all others but me may be forgiven, even for identical experiences. I can find out reasons why everyone else is fine. Right. I had a session recently with someone who I was discussing, who they really do believe they are like the worst person in the world based on the thoughts that they have. And I said, there's actually people in jail for like mass murder and all these kinds of things who planned it and went out and bought weapons and did all that stuff. How do you compare to them? And their response was, I'm worse. I'm worse than they are because I've had a thought about it. Right. So, in OCD, you are the worst of the worst, right? And you can't be anything but that to OCD, because that's the kind of stuff that OCD uses then to motivate and guide you to do what it wants you to do, because it ultimately wants you to do one thing, which is a compulsion, right? To do that. And then that's what OCD eats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So. Florian says, my OCD revolves around preventing others from harm. Florian, I've never had a surgery, so thank you for all the things you've done with your OCD. Obviously, it's oh, wait a minute, Florian. Oh, shoot, I hate to go back though, Florian, to my wife again, who died of cancer. So did your OCD prevent me from having surgeries, but not her? It would be my question, right? Or OCD tells you a lie, right? And says that your OCD prevents others from harm. But the reality is that your OCD has absolutely zero power whatsoever, and is a liar and has convinced you to believe in the lies that it tells you. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this. But sometimes I experience confusing situations where I'm not sure if an event is a real sensory perception or just a very vivid OCD scene, e.g., a noise that sounds like a person needing help. Ignoring causes strong guilt. How to balance between checking versus response prevention, reality versus OCD in such situations. This is so hard. Great question, Florian. And I love the explanation there that you gave, right? Because OCD will try to trick you at times into believing that something is not what it is. People can stare at a light switch and look at the light on the on the wall or on the ceiling and know that it's off, and yet still say, but wait a minute, I'm not quite sure. So they flip the light switch up to turn it on and then look at it. Oh wait, okay, now the light is on. And then they turn it off again and then doubt their very own sensory experience right there in that situation. But is it really off? Maybe I should turn on one more time just to make sure that I know the difference between on and off. So Florian, what you're describing is a standard OCD experience here, where OCD will be very tricky into getting you to believe, was that the sound of the wind outside, or is someone screaming for help? And wouldn't it be best if I just ran outside just to make sure? But on your 50th time of the day going outside to see if anybody is in need of help and finding that there is none, you know, what have you learned? You've learned, well, it was good that I just checked anyway, because you're going to hold on to this one belief, which is going to be, but what if one day it is somebody screaming for help and I don't actually go do something? Then it will be my fault and it will be awful and horrible. And I don't want to be responsible. So, Florian, it sounds to me like you're actually dealing with a responsibility type of OCD here, where you do feel as if you are responsible for the safety of other people. And therefore, Florian, what I want you to do is maybe just starting, and again, I can't give therapy advice tonight or anything like that, but one quick event you might want to do is that before you go outside, you flip a coin, and if it's heads, you go outside, and if it's tails, you don't. And you then sit with the guilt that you experience, the uncertainty and the doubt that you experience, because only by allowing yourself to do that will you start to feel better. If your goal is to feel better by doing compulsions, it's never going to happen. And you're never going to check enough times or enough people to see if everything's okay and actually feel good. That is never going to occur, just so you know. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Zanelli asks, how do you deal with a lack of motivation during ERP and recovery? That can happen sometimes when people feel a little bit stalled out in their experience. So I think one of the things that's really important to do is go back to a time when you were feeling motivated and what was going on back then. What were you doing different? I'm reminded of, I'm not a huge sports person by any means, but I heard one time that when somebody is in a slump in baseball, their natural inclination is to watch film to see what they're doing wrong. But hitting coaches pull film and say, watch this film because this is when you were doing things right. And I think one of our natural inclinations is to try to figure out what's going wrong when things aren't going right, instead of what was going right and what am I not doing that was right in the first place. So, Zanelli, how about this? Go back to a time when you were motivated. Think about what was different at that point when you were approaching treatment and try to approach it the same way this time around and see how it goes. Oh, we are. Wow. Jeez. Look at that. Time is flying. Just a reminder, once again, tonight brought to you by NOCD. NOCD downloadable app. You can get through Google Play or iOS. Please check us out. And if you're looking for teletherapy in the United States or in Canada or the UK or Australia, we are available and we take insurances. We also treat other things like hoarding and BFRBs, such as trichotillomania and skin picking or excoriation. And we work with ticks as well, too. And if you are looking for help, also just because you might not be ready for primetime therapy, but some family members are interested in knowing about OCD, we even have our NOCD 411 sessions that we can help people with as well too. So check us out at nocd.com. All right, Matthew says, I've been relatively good, but then all of a sudden my suicidal OCD has returned, and most days I just stay in bed too scared to do anything, and I'm going on a cruise in a month, and I want to be able to have a good time on the cruise and not have OCD and ruin my time. Is there anything I can do to get rid of OCD in that time? Yes, Matthew, I would like you to work with a therapist who will help you to mimic ERP that would be like the cruise, because I don't know this based on what you said, but I'm wondering if there's parts of you that think, wait a minute, there's a balcony. I could just throw myself off the ship and die in the water and everything. So, I would take you, Matthew, if you were working with me, to like a parking garage up to the top of it, and we would think about, we could totally throw ourselves off the top of this garage right now and just go curse splat right there on the ground, and wow, that would cause quite a crowd, wouldn't it? And blood and guts would be all over the place and everything. And might have a couple of contorted bones sticking out of our body as well too. Oh, that'd be fascinating. And I would do anything, Matthew, that you're afraid might happen on the cruise, and mimic it as much as you possibly can with a therapist. If that even means going for a walk on a pier so that you are next to water, you do something like that. But here's one thing I can guarantee you, Matthew, and for any of you listening, I will make this guarantee to you as well too, as much as I can guarantee everything. It's never 100% though, but I'm going to give a pretty darn good one here. And that is this: laying around in bed thinking ain't going to do crap. Okay. OCD wants you to be scared. OCD wants you to be laying out around in bed, not doing anything. You ain't going to make any darn changes whatsoever, Matthew, if that's what you do. Okay. So, is therapy going to be scary? Sure. Is the cruise going to be scary? Probably. Can you handle it? 100%. I absolutely believe that you can. And that's what I want you to go do, Matthew, is go and handle it. Don't sit around. All right. That's what I want you to do. Marie says, my OCD is getting really hard. I struggle with contamination OCD. And for an example, if my foot touched an item I felt was contaminated, then of course that would raise your anxiety. However, it doesn't stop there. It will fixate on everything that item could have touched before. And now all these things are contaminated as well. How do I overcome this? It's getting exhausting. Marie, the entire world is contaminated. That might not be the answer that you want to hear, but I'm going to promise you that it is. And let me give you an example of how I know this, Marie. I worked with someone one time who had a fear of what she called death germs. And she said she saw someone drive out of a cemetery and turn right on the street. And then she was following that car, and she started thinking, wait, that car was just in a cemetery. It has death germs on it because, that's where death germs live, is in the cemetery. Obviously, I mean, I think all of us are aware of that, right? And so the car picked up the death germs on the tires and now was driving, and now her tires were picking up the death germs that were coming off of the tire in the car in front of her. So I said, okay, let's just do some math here. All right. And the math is this: you go this way on one street and that car goes that way. And then you have the street that came off the expressway. Now, let's just say 25 cars drive on that street that came off of the cemetery. I might have said expressway there. I meant cemetery. And then let's say 10 cars go this street and 10 cars go this street. And then each of them go in various places and everything like that. And then other cars cross then where those cars went, picking up the death germs as they go, and then they go these places and that. And by just drawing it out, I had a massive map. And by drawing it out, I said, every road in the United States within a month is got death germs on it. Oh, and by the way, your cemetery isn't the only cemetery in the United States. There's at least one in every other state in the U.S. as well, too. And we can probably say there's at least 100 in every other state. And therefore, not only is every street covered in death germs, they've always been covered in death germs if this is the way death germs get transmitted. And therefore, you've always been exposed to death germs. So the only difference in what you're describing to me today is now you're thinking about it differently than you ever thought about it before. But the reality is you've been exposed to death germs since the day you were born. Well, she didn't like that. That was not a fun answer for her. She wanted to know how to make the death germs go away. How do I get them off my car? So I don't know. I haven't found the death germ cleaner yet. I don't know if bleach kills death germs as well too. Maybe Lysol or some other kind of spray. It says it kills 99.9% of germs, but I don't know if death germs is on the list or not. If anyone knows the chemical makeup of the death germ, please put it in the chat as well too. I'd love to see exactly what it is, and maybe we can come up with a formula to spray on it that would kill it. Or They don't really exist, but as long as we think they do, we can be afraid of it, right? And Marie, I think this exactly applies to anything that your foot touched, right? Because not only has your foot touched it, other feet have touched it, which have then walked in other places and have dropped off some of those germs along every step they've took, and other people have crossed those paths and walked and everything like that. So Marie, tell me one thing in the world that doesn't have contamination on it based on your foot germs, other than maybe a building that has a HEPA system in it built to build satellites where you put booties on and coveralls and all sorts of things. And maybe those are the only places that don't actually have the germs that we're talking about. But otherwise, Marie, I don't know of a place that exists that doesn't have the germs that you're afraid of right now, because they are everywhere. OCD hates that. OCD doesn't want to hear that, but OCD knows that, but it doesn't like it, right? And so this is what we're dealing with all the time. How do we get people to, handle things that they don't like? Right. OCD doesn't like a lot of stuff and wants certainty and answers and all sorts of things. But you know what? You're never going to be able to give the doubting disorder the certainty that it wants because it doubts everything. Chloe says, with you being a therapist for so long, how easy is it to recognize OCD? And do some subtypes make it harder to diagnose than others, like relationship OCD over contamination? Hope you're having a good week too. Well, thank you, Chloe. Yeah, you do this for 23 years, you kind of recognize it pretty quickly. In terms of the only things that I think are really harder is just it's still always a challenge to help people identify all of the mental compulsions that they do because you can't see it. So it's constantly getting people to be aware of the mental compulsions that they do and to work with assessing what those are with people as you're working with them. So that's the one of the biggest pieces right off the bat is just how do we get to make sure that we're doing assessments for all of the mental compulsions. But yeah, you do something for 23 years, you become pretty good with it. I go to a restaurant and I just start looking around with people and I can just pick up behaviors that people do at restaurants and tables and things that, kind of alert me to contamination issues that people have or different things. Or just watching people who go back and check things and try to do it in a very sneaky way, but I'm pretty good at catching sneaky things as well too. So, you know, it comes around. But Christina says, could you go into detail about response prevention? I have exposures down for like holding the knife, but what else do I do? And then Matthew says, Christine, it's basically like stopping compulsions. And she says, thank you. I was having a brain fart. Okay, well, good. You've all answered that one. That was wonderful. Sherry B says, Dr. McGrath, would you please recommend a hospital that recognizes and practices ERP? I used to work at Amita Health, which is now Ascension, Illinois, but it's all Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health Hospital in the Chicago area. And I started the intensive outpatient and partial hospital programming there for anxiety and OCD, and they still do that program there to this day. So you can look at Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health Hospital, Sherry, if that's something that you're looking for. Bianca says, if recovered, can the past OCD theme return? Of course, absolutely. OCD doesn't ever go away, right? You have OCD if you have OCD, and OCD may always be looking for a way to kind of climb back out of that box, right? And be like, oh, hey, did you miss me? Here I am. Hello. Hey, what's up? And you just want to kind of recognize that is a possibility, which is one of the reasons why I tell people every day do ERP, right? Always, always, always. It's ERP, ERP, ERP. Keep doing it. Even if you're feeling better, purposely do an exposure every day just to kind of keep yourself in the, kind of in the practice of it, right? Love to Play 100 says, is there a website to order the theme song you play? I need this in my life. Thanks. Forgot to ask last week. Yeah, well, our friend Paul Melia, and let me go right to that old site there. And it's Paul, Paul, and Melia. Okay. Check Paul, Melia, Melia out. And, he is awesome. And he's actually been on this program. Maybe it's time to bring Paul back again to do another one. He lives in Ireland, so the time difference is hell for him. But it would be fun to have Paul back on again. So yes, and Paul just released some new tracks actually as well too. So again, Paul Melia, check him out. All right, let's see, Shitana. What can you do about OCD and PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder? One of the things, Shitana, that I have seen helpful is I've worked in conjunction with some OBGYNs, because we do know that for some women, the monthly cycle can also weigh heavily on the experience of OCD. And so some people have found that a prescription of some kind of a birth control medication has been very, very helpful in people's lives to help regulate some of those hormones, which also then plays a more positive role on the experience of the OCD cycle throughout the month as well too. So you might want to check that out. Virginia says, so thankful for NOCD. Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you, Virginia. Captain says, Dr. McGrath, how can I tell the difference between an actual concerned chance of having autism that should be pursued versus an obsession about having autism and not knowing it? Well, I never have a problem with somebody checking something out once, but what I would do, Captain, is I would get the evaluation if there's some issues there that you think could be there. But if you get the evaluation and they say yes, you go with it. If they say no, then you kind of go with that as well too. OCD will say, well, maybe they missed it either way, right? I mean, well, they said yes, but I don't think they were really right. Or they said no, but I really think that they were wrong about that. And you just want people to recognize, hey, go with what the experts say in these types of situations. I can't tell you if you do or do not have it without getting a good evaluation with you. So I would make sure that that's what you do. Lauren asks, how does NOCD therapy work? Monthly virtual meetings? No, twice a week is what we like to start off with, Lauren, and get people really jump starting into that OCD ERP experience and kind of building from there, right? So as much as we can front load that ERP, we try to do it. And as long as we can fit schedules to do that, that's what we will attempt to do. Kitten Nuggets, fun name. I'm having trouble writing my letter of grievance, about what I went through at a place that you had to resign from. You seize up and basically can't do it perfect, so you can't start. So Kitten Nuggets, here's what I want you to do. Don't try to write the perfect letter, Kitten. I want you to write the most imperfect letter of grievance from the place you had to resign to as you possibly can. And then write a little less imperfect one, and then a little less imperfect one. And when you get to a only 5% imperfect one, that's when you can send the letter. But if your goal is to write the perfect letter, you're never going to send the letter, because the letter will never be perfect, because perfect does not exist. Perfect is an opinion. And OCD will keep saying, wait a minute, not quite right. Try it again, right? And so you're never going to do it. So that's what I think, Kitten, you ought to try to do. See how that goes. Beth says, hello. Hello, Beth. How are you? And Janne, Jenlyn. I'm sorry, I'm butchering that name. I'm horrible on phonetics. Any tips on ERP for fear of heart disease? Thank you for your work. Well, one of the things that I see sometimes for people who have this kind of illness, anxiety, or OCD around health and fear of heart disease is that they attempt to never get their heart rate up whatsoever. I mean, that's their goal. It's like, I cannot get my heart rate up. I do not want to have a heart attack. And so what I want you to do is to work with a trainer, or, get a good evaluation to make sure that things are good on the heart. And once you've found that all is well, get a good workout situation going, right? Work with somebody who kind of guides you through that experience. And I would include interoceptive exposures into that experience. Interoceptive exposures are exposure and response prevention exercises designed specifically for bodily sensations, where you want people to feel the bodily sensations and learn how to handle them. And that might even mean things like chest tightening or heart racing or things of that nature, and allow yourself to know that you can handle those things and that you don't have to run away from them or try to avoid them, because in and of themselves, they are not dangerous. So I hope that helps. Jalissa says, how do you know when you're dealing with relationship OCD or actual relationship issues? Well, Jalissa, that might be really a question for a therapist to work out with you. It's hard to say. There is no hard and fast rule, other than one of the things that I do see a lot of times in people who have relationship OCD is they keep asking the same questions over and over again. And though given an answer, choose not to believe it, because they don't know for sure that what if this time the person was just lying or just saying that to be nice. Maybe I should ask him one more time. And when you're kind of getting to that point where your questioning is becoming compulsive, I think you're probably leaning more on the ROCD experience than you are just on relationship issues. So take a look at this. Are you able to hear an answer and go with it? Or is there constantly doubt even in the answers that you're given because you truly believe that it's not quite there the way that you want it to know? So that might be helpful. JG says, my main theme is responsibility OCD, and the people are actually in serious need of help. I don't know how to do ERP for this because not helping them would be immoral. JG, there's plenty of people in the world that could use help. And so if that's the case, anyone not helping everyone is immoral, right? So I think that we have to pick and choose where we can give our help, right? And some people go to the point of my own livelihood doesn't matter as much as making sure that other people have a livelihood. But that could lead to a point where, are you homeless? Are you a person who's living on the street or something because you've given all your money away trying to be helpful to other people? And there are some people or even some religions that might say that would be an appropriate thing to do. You look at history of many religions who people who gave up everything and just went and lived and begged so that other people could use their fortunes for things that could go on with their lives. That could be a spiritual decision, that could be a moral decision, and that could also be an OCD decision as well too. So JG, I want you to know that I did not appoint you, nor do I believe anybody appointed you as the person who was the arbiter of everyone that needs help and the cure of all help that was needed. But your OCD did appoint you that, just so you know. So your OCD will say to you that, no, JG, you are responsible for all these things. You are responsible for the health and wellness of everybody else in the world. And you better darn make sure that you put yourself second and everybody else becomes first. And by the way, JG, your OCD is going to tell you this is not OCD. This is just good practice to be. But that's what OCD does. It disguises itself as like being moral or ethical or good practice in some situations and wants you to do these things. So JG, I'd work with a therapist to help kind of make some decisions. And there's nothing wrong with being a charitable person, but it is okay to make sure that you're getting all of your needs met and everything too before you take care of everybody else. They do say on an airplane to make sure that you put your mask on first before you do it for other people. And there's actually a reason behind that, which is if there is a loss of pressure and the person that you're trying to help can't get their mask on and you go to help them and you pass out, now you're both screwed, right? So the best thing to do would be get your mask on, making sure you don't pass out, and then get the mask on those people. And even if they do pass out, the air is still going to be flowing, getting to them, and you could do what you can to try to wake them up. But if you both pass out, none of you are getting help, and both of you potentially have a loss of life in that situation. So guess what? Being helpful to yourself first sometimes is a very good thing to do. Okay. Jalissa asks if NOCD is going to take state insurance. Jalissa, keep checking in with us. We're always working on trying to get new relationships with insurance companies. So I would say keep checking in on that. Alex and Lewis say, how do you deal with anxiety if you don't even know what's making you anxious? Well, I would take a look at whatever the symptoms of anxiety are. And if they're panic-like symptoms, you can go back to those interoceptive ERP experiences like I was talking about earlier. That could be very, very helpful. And usually, Alex, even if you don't know what it is that's making you anxious, a trained therapist might be able to spot this and be able to be helpful to you and give you some ideas about what could be actually making you anxious. So I would reach out to somebody who's well-trained in anxiety and OCD, if that's the case, what's going on with you, and let someone else give kind of a look in as well too. Virginia says, dealing with sexual orientation OCD and pedophilic OCD, and very grateful for your therapist who is helping you. That's awesome. Great to hear, Virginia. Vendetta. Ooh. Greetings. How do I manage my health OCD hypochondriasis when my symptoms do feel real and having a potential deadly illness is something horrible that you cannot control? Well, you're right. It is something that you cannot control, and your symptoms will feel real because, as I've said here time and time again, OCD has to feel real. I mean, imagine if OCD didn't feel. Imagine if OCD was saying to you, hey, this thing's going on, but, I know it doesn't feel very real. And you'd be like, oh, you know what? It doesn't really feel real, but I should probably listen to it anyway, just to make no, OCD has to feel real. The building's always on fire with OCD. It's got to absolutely feel real to kind of work. So, Vendetta, here's what I want you to do. if you get a test and you get results, you have to go with those, right? And will you feel things? Yeah, right. And if a new symptom comes up, you check it out, right? I mean, when again, I hate going always back to this, but when Susan got sick, there was a pain in her hip, and at first it was okay. Well, it's a muscle strain, and then a month later there was another thing, and it's like, it could be this, and then finally the third time around it was like, oh, well, maybe we should just do a scan, right? Because it kept coming back, and by the time they found it, it was too late. But guess what? Even if they had found it that first time, because it was only a month, it would have been too late as well too at that point. So I hold no grievances on those types of things. That, oh my gosh, it was only a month earlier, I could have done something. No, it was way too far gone already in that kind of case. But OCD is going to listen to a story like that and go, but what if your month would be the thing that could have changed it, right? Oh, maybe, and so wouldn't it be best just to constantly be assured that nothing is wrong and everything is going to be okay? Well, I think we'd all love that. We'd all love to know that everything's fine and everything's okay and that nothing dangerous is going on and there's nothing potentially cancerous or deadliness inside of us in any way. But can any of us ever get that absolute guarantee that that's what's going to happen? And even if we could, OCD people, I want you to be honest here. Everybody, I raise my right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Here's your question. Even if I gave you a test result that said you have an amazingly clean bill of health, would you 100% believe it or not? If you said you would believe it and you have OCD, I think you're lying, just so you know. Okay. Vendetta, I can't give you the answer that you want. And we all have noisy bodies, which means we're always going to feel something, right? And we're always going to be able to interpret that as the worst case scenario, as an awful, horrible symptom. So part of it is learning that, you know what, just because I feel something doesn't mean it's true or real. Right? And that's a tough thing to do, but work with a therapist on that and they can really help you get through to that experience. Charlie says, got a question about ERP. Once you sit with an intrusive thought, how do you move on to a new train of thought without it being a compulsion? Both compulsions and mindfulness help anxiety, right? Hope you're well. Oh, well, that was an easy question. Thanks. Charlie, what I want people to do is even, and I've said this before, you don't have to sit with anxiety. I want you to live with anxiety. So instead of going down the rabbit hole of the compulsion, just allow the thought to be there and live your life and do what you need to do. That doesn't then mean that you're distracting. That means that you're living the life that you want to live. Guess what? Eventually, as you're working on something, other thoughts are going to pop into your head, right? The moment I tell you don't think of anything but a pink elephant, right? Only think of pink elephants. It just takes a few moments for other thoughts to pop in your head. But if I tell you do not think of a pink elephant, it becomes very hard to think of anything but a pink elephant. So that's really the way that works. The mind is kind of a paradoxical thing. And, that's why we kind of get stuck in some of these things. So hopefully that's helpful. How do you manage? We did that one already. So we'll move on. My OCD themes tend to revolve around my brother. He is both bipolar and has schizophrenic tendencies. With his beliefs being so far from mine, I compared for so long that I can't stop. It is hard, Ryan, when someone has another kind of significant mental health issue, and we look at that and we go, but what if? But what if? Right? What if I were to become that? What? In fact, it is not uncommon for people with OCD to be afraid. What if this isn't OCD? What if this is something else like schizophrenia or bipolar or those types of things? Or what if one day I develop one of those things? And there's the health kind of link that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier as well too. Ryan, you know, is there an opportunity for you to develop one of those things? Of course. And so is there for me and everyone else in the world. So Ryan, I'm not here to tell you you can't have it or that you never will have it, right? But what I also want you to recognize, Ryan, is that just because you're surrounded by people who have it doesn't guarantee you're going to have it. And just because other people have have odd or strange types of thoughts doesn't mean those are the same things as what happens in OCD. Because typically what we're going to see in somebody with psychosis is they're going to believe those thoughts. They're going to be egosyntonic, as we call it. And what do we typically see with OCD? It's ego dystonic. I don't like these thoughts. I don't want them. And I'm trying to do something to actively neutralize them and to make them go away, right? Versus people who are typically having some kind of a psychosis experience are actually interacting with those thoughts. They're talking to them. They're hearing those voices. They're interacting with them. They're having active conversations with those types of things. They're not doing something right away to try to neutralize it, to make it go away. So those would just be some things that I would see that would be going on there. Olivia says, I don't know how to get the right treatment for pure OCD. I live in Austria. What can I do? Is it still possible to contact with some of the therapists on your platform? Yeah, Olivia, still reach out to NOCD. Let's see if we can do something for you. Okay. So go to NOCD.com and check the therapist button, and let's have a conversation and see if there's something that we can do. Thanks, Jesse. Oh, love and support. Oh, look at all of you. Well, now I'm finally getting to to that part of where we're at. How does someone grow insight? Love Lana says a good therapist is helpful, and yep, I'm gonna agree with Love Lana on that one. Absolutely, sure. Captain Cass says he's gonna try to go to the grocery store next Thursday. All right, yeah, everyone ask next week. Captain Cass, did you go to the grocery store? All right, gotta go. Lauren says this week I have a goal of pausing even for 5 seconds before performing a compulsion. Good job. All right, love it. Keep doing these things, guys, and hold everybody accountable to it, and come back and speak your truth. Did you do it? Did you follow through? Beth says your OCD wouldn't let you have Pop-Tarts, so you bought them. Good job, Beth. I'm proud of you. That's great. Tracy says, can you speak to scrupulosity and the best treatment for Christians? It doesn't matter for Christians or Muslims or Jewish people or Hindu or whatever. The best treatment for OCD is exposure and response prevention, right? So Tracy, know that, right? Now OCD will say to you, oh, no, it's different for Christian. We're different. We're different than the others. So we would need a different therapy. But that's just an OCD lie and trick that it tries to tell you. It might also say to you, and since I am a Christian, I also need a therapist who has the exact same type of Christianity that I have. And there's, several thousand different versions of Christianity. So they must exactly match mine to truly understand what it is that I'm going through in order to be able to help me, which is a lie as well, too, just so you know, because you absolutely don't have to have that. The goal of treating scrupulosity is not to have any kind of change in religion, right? We're not here to debate any kind of religious texts or things of that nature. We're here to get people to live the life they want to live in the religion that they want to be in without the influence of obsessive compulsive disorder on that religion. That's ultimately where we're at, right? So that's what I want you to keep in mind and recognize is that very thing right there. Okay. Let's see. We'll scroll through here. Savannah says, I've really been struggling this week. I moved to a new area to be closer to your long distance partner, and you've been having these intrusive thoughts, doubts, even though you've been wanting this. Well, of course, Savannah, because remember, moving is a stressor. And if OCD loves anything to kick it off, it's a stressor. So even though you've moved and you've wanted this, and this is something you were looking forward to, OCD is kind of taking the stress of the experience and be like, wait a minute. This is not what I thought it was going to be. There are not unicorns shitting rainbows all over the place like my goal was, right? No, instead, there's doubt and uncertainty. Wait, did OCD move here to? God, damn it, OCD! I told you to stay back home. I did you sneak in a box and the movers moved you here? Darn it, you stupid OCD, pesky little you! I'm gonna send you back in. No, I can't send you back in. I'm damn. All right, you're here now. Oh crap! All right, well. OCD, what did you do with the unicorns? Because could they at least show up and poop a few rainbows out for us? Because that would at least be nice and something like no, it's not. Come on, folks, it's not going to work that way. We know that, right? OCD again loves a stressor. Moving, stressor. Moving with someone you love, stressor. Getting married to the person you love, stressor. Having a baby with someone, stressor. Right? All those things can be seen as wonderful things by many people, but guess what? They're stressors. And OCD loves to chew on a stressor. I mean, boy, what a great snack for OCD. Oh, here, OCD, got a stressor for you. Ooh, thank you. OCD is just all giddy about the fact that you've just given it a good stressor. So keep that in mind, Savannah. You're dealing with a stressor right now. Allow for the experience to settle in. Let's see where it goes. JK says, can you speak about staring OCD? Because I don't know how to deal with it because I can't just avoid looking at people. No. And so you can practice with looking at people and recognizing that you can handle looking at people, right? You can even practice staring at your therapist and working on that as well too, and allow yourself to realize, wait a minute, this isn't necessarily what I want to be doing, and I don't have to do this, right? Because OCD will say to you, I don't know, you're looking at them enough, or maybe you're not doing it the right way, or maybe you're looking at a part you're not supposed to be looking at, right? And then of course you're going to check to see if you're looking at a part that you're not supposed to be looking at, and then by checking to see if you're looking at a part you're not supposed to look at, you're looking at a part that OCD tells you not to look at, and then OCD says to you, caught you, crotch staring, knew it, you crotch starer, what a horrible, awful person you are, shouldn't be doing that, that's bad, that's awful. Now make sure you don't look at anybody, because if you look at people, you're going to look at their crotches, and no one likes their crotch being stared at, and you don't want to be known as the crotch starer, so just don't look at anybody, and then everything will be fine and all will be okay. It's not a great way to live through life though, right? So guess what? Anytime we look at people, we see their boobs, we see their crotches, we see their butts. It is the way that it is. Our eyes don't have black bars that appear across things to censor them out, or little fuzzies or anything like that. Although those were some pretty funny Halloween costumes I saw this year. But it's not the way that we can't pixelate the boobs and the groins and the butts, right? They're there. We're going to see them, and we're going to have to deal with the fact that they're there and we see them. So we have to practice that, and we have to practice being okay with the fact that we're seeing them as well too. Nahid, regarding relationship OCD, a friendship breakup, how do we know if we've taken all necessary actions to reconcile? You don't, and you never will. Because according to OCD, you've never taken all the actions to reconcile, because there's no way to truly do that in OCD, because OCD is insatiable, and you can't ever do enough in OCD. So it's not about taking all the necessary actions to reconcile. It's doing what you need to do. And if it comes to a point where you've tried on a few occasions to be able to reconcile and it's still not working, and that friend doesn't want to have anything to do with you, sometimes we just have to accept the fact that that friendship is done. And maybe it can rekindle at some point in the future, but guess what? Sometimes friendships are just done, and that is the thing that we will just have to accept sometimes. Okay. Claire asks, how do you know when maybe medication is necessary to treat OCD? I'm looking to see my doctor, but I feel that because sometimes I experience extreme anxiety, sometimes I don't, maybe going to the doctor for no reason. Well, Claire, it's always this discussion that you can have with any therapist that you're working with, and weigh the pros and the cons of it. But I would say this, I'm always a fan of trying therapy or ERP first, just because there's no side effects to that there might be with taking a medication. So the American Psychiatric Association says there's two recommended treatments for OCD. One of them is ERP, and the other is ERP plus medication. So give ERP a try, see how it goes. And if you find that you need to add something to it, then you can take a look at doing that as well too. Okay. All right. Sammy says, you've been seeing an OCD therapist for a month, but there's some talk of outpatient programs. Would increasing daily exposures to 2 help me progress better? It could. Absolutely. It's a possibility. Sammy, feel free to have your therapist reach out to me or their regional clinical director, and let's see if we can help kind of ramp it up even for you a little bit more to make sure that we don't have to have you go to there. I mean, it would be great if we don't. Those programs are very helpful for people who maybe need them as well too. But let's see if we can prevent that from potentially happening. And finally, oh no, there was just some comments to everybody else there. So, well, once again, brought to you by NOCD. NOCD, a downloadable app you can get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out. Go to nocd.com, hit that therapist button on the app, and you know what? Check out if you can do a free 15-minute call with one of our care team members, and let's see if we can get you set up with one of our therapists throughout the U.S. Canada, UK, or Australia. And remember, we're doing education sessions, and we're also treating other things like hoarding and BFRBs too. It's been another awesome night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. And Paul taking us out again. We're going to have him back sometime. We'll see you all soon.